welcome as everyone arrives. Lovely to see lots of people arriving. We are just waiting for Nancy from Arts, Culture, Health and Wellbeing Scotland to rejoin us. She is in Dumfries at the Healing Arts Scotland Dumfries Day today, and unfortunately we're having technical difficulties, but hopefully she will be able to rejoin us.
Okay. I'm happy if you want to let people in. My Wi-Fi just dropped out. Bear with me. There we go.
Hi, Nancy. We've let people in, so
Great.
glad to see you back.
Okay. Shall we make a start? Are the people still coming in?
I think if we make a start, that would be brilliant.
Okay, so I'm Nancy Reig. I'm the Development Coordinator for Arts, Culture, Health and Wellbeing Scotland. Welcome to the call. Obviously, this week is Healing Arts Scotland. I was up in Aberdeen yesterday for the day there. I'm currently in Dumfries for the day here. Orkney and Shetland also have activity going on, and so does Dundee. So there's things happening everywhere. And today we're online with this conversation. So today's event is part of a programme of online conversations that we're doing with Healing Arts Scotland. The whole Healing Arts runs from 15th to 19th of June. If anybody wants to find out about other events happening the rest of the week, you can go onto the Healing Arts Scotland website, which is healingarts.org. And for those who haven't engaged before with Arts, Culture, Health and Wellbeing Scotland, we're a national network dedicated to supporting and advocating for the role of arts and culture in improved health and wellbeing in Scotland. Just before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. This call is being recorded, and for those on the call, we will send out the link afterwards if you want to watch it back again or share it with colleagues, and we'll also share it with a few people who aren't able to make the session, but just so you're aware, it is being recorded. And there will also be someone monitoring the chat throughout the session, so we'll flag up kind of comments and things as they come up in the chat. And I would also ask if you would all mute yourselves. If you come and join the call or your mute comes off, please can you mute yourselves? That would be fantastic. So I'm going to pass you across to our wonderful host and panel for this conversation. So over to Catherine Middleton-Finlay, who works as a freelance consultant with Creative Scotland, and she will explain her role of what she's doing with them as the call goes on. So over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm delighted to have been asked to host the session. As I say, I'm Catherine Middleton-Finlay. I'm a freelance arts and health professional who is currently being commissioned to coordinate and facilitate an arts and mental health framework for Scotland. I will be telling you a bit more about that at the end of this call. I am delighted to be joined by three practitioners who are actually all on our islands today. So the nature of this session is going to be as follows. We're going to invite each of our panelists to talk for 10 minutes, a little bit about themselves and their practice and their experiences. And then we will have a couple of questions from myself to the panelists, and then we will open it up to our attendees. I'm delighted that there are, as well as online participants, I believe we have a group up in Shetland who are joining us. So I'm delighted that they are able to join us. If you have any questions, yeah, please put it in the chat or raise your hands, and we will certainly get to you as soon as possible. Our three panelists I'm delighted to introduce are Stephanie Helliwell-Baird, who is a warm, collaborative, and deeply inquisitive dance artist, practitioner, researcher, and visual artist who's proudly based in the Auckland Islands. Her creative practice is built on a simple foundational belief that movement is a profound gift that belongs to everyone and that artists are at their best when they work together. With over 20 years of dedicated experience developing the regional arts landscape, Stephanie has pioneered professional dance infrastructure across the archipelago, proving that movement is an intrinsic human right. I'm also delighted to welcome Andrew Eaton-Lewis, who is here with two hats on today. He is the Arts Programming Officer for the Mental Health Foundation, where he's recently been working on a good practice resource for participatory arts and mental health projects. Again, towards the end of this call, Andrew will be sharing more details about that. He lives on the Isle of Skye, where he runs artist support events for the arts venue Atlanta. And I'm also delighted to welcome Catherine Gordon, who is the Creative Project Manager at Shetland Arts, who manages a range of projects, including Even Here, Even Now, and Shetland Arts Commissioning Strand. Catherine is also a freelance dance artist, who specializes in inclusion provision and delivers arts for health practice. Starting us off, I am going to ask the panel if they can introduce themselves a bit, introduce where they are based and what they do. I'm going to ask Stephanie to start.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I am based in the Orkney Islands, and I run an organisation called Move Orkney, which we founded back in 2017. My teaching practice goes back further than that. I started teaching in 2007 in Orkney, and the practice was mainly ballet, contemporary, jazz, tap, very much a dance school setting, and then we went into the Stromness Academy and delivered 2 years of dance education there, non-funded. And that sparked a big question in my mind from coming from Edinburgh and being at Broughton High School and getting dance education at such a young age was, why aren't we doing this here and how could we do it? So we have in the last kind of 10 years infrastructured our NPAs, National Professional Awards, in collaboration with Edinburgh College. Over that time, I've also been collaborating and working with visiting artists. A lot of the time, because there was no infrastructure of support for artists, they were travelling to Caithness or Shetland, but missing Orkney due to not having a promoter here or a support network here. So we've kind of taken on that bandwagon of support, and we have housed around about 6 touring artists. We've got our 7th one on the way next week, and we have on our books for 2026, 2027 and 2028 another 7 artists coming either in residency, touring, or collaborating with us or working with the community or doing R&D. So we're not only just housing a dance school, we're also supporting research development for creative process. We're looking at collaboration between myself and other artists, and also touring networks and Creative Scotland Touring Fund. So we've kind of like built that bridge. I also work within Dance for Parkinson's. I've been researching this framework since around about 2018. And now we have a very well received and attended Dance for PD class under the Merry Dancers project, and they will be performing today at the Balfour Hospital. We've also then gone on to deeper roots with the MS groups in Orkney. Orkney has the highest MS rate in the world, so we really wanted to kind of keep the conversation going after Scottish Ballet left, and kept their project alive, even though they're no longer here. And we also have the Silver Swans under the Royal Academy of Dance framework. So we're growing our andragogical practice consistently. They will also be performing today, and they've also been invited to Eden Court in November to perform. So they'll be performing on the big stage there. We try and create opportunities for our dancers, not just our youth dancers, which are actually heading to U Dance in the next few weeks. They've been invited to open up the 3-day procession of U Dance at Tramway. So we do try and offer opportunity for our youth and our senior students, and also our more mature students, not just coming taking class, but also having meaningful experiences along the way. Also, on top of that, I do a lot of work myself. I'm just going back into creating a piece of work, which we are now looking for our funding, and then that will come to light hopefully in 2028 once it's kind of gone through its R&D. And that's kind of a little bit of what we are and who we are as a non-for-profit organisation, trying to build a value and a sustainable practice for dance here. So that's 20 years of what we've done, and hopefully we'll be going another 20 years and beyond that in the future. Thank you for listening. Hope that you enjoyed my pitch, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Does anyone have any questions for Stephanie at the moment? Or if not, I'm delighted to move on to Andrew. Andrew, could you tell us a bit more about yourself, where you're based, and your practice?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Like Catherine said, I kind of wear a couple of different hats, probably more than 2 hats, actually. And like a lot of people working in the arts, I do quite a few different things for a living. Some of it involves mental health. Some of it involves rural arts. Some of it involves participatory arts. Sometimes these things overlap, sometimes they don't. And I mention this because it might impact later on whether I feel qualified to answer a question or not. So I moved to the Isle of Lewis in 2018, and I'm still mostly based there. I'm not from there originally, but I wanted to move there for my kids to give them a different kind of life, kind of mainly. Since 2018, I've done quite a lot of work with Anlanta, which is in Stornoway and is the biggest arts centre in the Outer Hebrides and the main hub for everything cultural that goes on in the Isle of Lewis. I programmed a winter festival there for 5 years. For a few years, I ran Anlanta's artist support programme, which included mentoring, social events, artist bursaries and other initiatives to provide opportunities for artists living in the Hebrides. I've been involved in a couple of participatory arts projects in Lewis, including one as a songwriter, which is another thing I've been doing for many years now, where I co-wrote songs with people living with dementia. Although that was kind of one-to-one with individuals rather than with groups of people. I would say that island culture is kind of participatory in its nature, but I mean by that I mean that it's a culture of singing together, telling stories together, cailling together, with everybody sort of on the same level. There's very little sense of hierarchy, and to a large extent, it's folk culture, it's community culture. So most of my work in the Hebrides is quite sort of locally focused, community focused, but I also work on a more national level, 2 days a week as arts program officer for the Mental Health Foundation. So I'm one of a very small core programming team for the Scottish Mental Health Arts Festival, or SMAF as most people call it, which is now in its 20th year and has been really quite groundbreaking in combining the arts with mental health and well-being. The way the festival has been programmed has been imitated internationally. For anyone who isn't familiar with SMAF, it takes place every October with hundreds of events all over Scotland. It's very much a community-based, grassroots up festival. The vast majority of it is programmed by a network of people all over the country. Some of them work in the health sector, some of them work in the arts, some work across both of these areas, and it's always really interesting to see how these things intersect. Every year, the members of this kind of national network vote on what the theme of the festival is going to be, and then we discover what the festival is about in a very kind of organic way as hundreds of people across Scotland respond to that theme that they've chosen together. This year the theme they chose was reflections, as we look back on 20 years of festival programming together. I would add, by the way, that we are always interested in hearing from people and organisations that haven't previously been a part of the festival and would be interested in taking part. So please get in touch, and I'll put my email in the chat if you would like to get in touch. So my own work for the Mental Health Foundation generally involves finding ways to support people who want to make creative work about mental health. And this can be through artist commissions, through showcase events, through a mental health award that we run every year at the Edinburgh Fringe, which we're doing again this year. Sometimes it's just through talking to artists, connecting them to experts in the field of mental health that they're wanting to explore, or helping with funding applications. As part of SHMAF, we also run a national writing competition and an international film competition, both of which have been running for quite a few years now. In recent years, a lot of my work has been focused on putting together, as Catherine said, good practice resources for people making creative work about mental health, supported by funding from the Bearing Foundation, whose director, David Cutler, I think is here today. The most recent of these is specifically about participatory arts. So I have been spending quite a bit of the last year talking to a lot of people all over Scotland, artists, organisations, including a few from rural areas, about their experiences of making participatory arts projects that focus on mental health. And that resource is just about to be published, so look out for that. Yeah, so that is me, I think. In short, I work across all the areas that have been referenced in the title of this event, just not always at the same time, if that makes sense. But I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. Does anyone have any questions for Andrew at this time? If not, then I am happy to invite Catherine, who is Shetland Arts, to speak about her practice.
Hello, everybody. We were given 10 minutes. I've kind of prepped something that I think will take about 10 minutes. I'm Catherine Gordon. I'm Creative Project Manager at Shetland Arts Development Agency. Thought I'd tell you a little bit about Shetland Arts. So we have 4 buildings. We have Mariel, which we are in right now. It's a multi-art form performance and education centre in Lerwick, which is Shetland's capital. There's the Booth, which is a residency space, which is managed by WASPs. This is in a different town. The Garrison Theatre, which is a theatre space that we manage. And there's Bonhoga, which is a visual arts and crafts gallery, exhibition, retail, workshop and cafe space, which is in the west of Shetland. I manage a range of projects at Shetland Arts, and these are including, but definitely not limited to, exhibitions, Shetland's Visual Arts and Crafts Makers Award that we facilitate through Creative Scotland, some workshops and outreach. I've managed Wellbeing Arts in our past, and my current focus is on our commissioning strand and what soon will be more of Even Here, Even Now project delivery. I'll come back to some Shetland Arts activity. However, I thought it would also make sense to share a little bit about my background and my freelance work. I'm a dancer and choreographer, and last year I toured Scotland and presented work as part of the Made in Scotland showcase at the Edinburgh Fringe. This work was a dance work for all ages 8 and up, and it looked at migratory patterns of birds and what a sense of home and belonging is for people. It was entirely made in Shetland, and it was predominantly working with island-based artists. Andrew was producer on the show, which was amazing. It also included the community by interviewing 10 Shetland-based women whose voices can be heard in the work. I was particularly proud to receive the Creative Scotland's Touring Fund to tour work to more centralised location that was made on the peripheries. I think it's really important that the funding doesn't just go to central belt-based artists that then travel to the islands. So I know that's core aim of the fund, and was really excited to make the work here and take it elsewhere. My background has been in inclusive arts, and I've worked internationally, working in Asia as a choreographer in residence for a disabled dance company. The work I created here toured internationally and always had inclusivity at its core throughout the delivery of the tours, made and delivered by people with and without disabilities. I was commissioned by UNICEF to create work that had educational impact in highly illiterate populations. I'm on the board of the Workroom in Glasgow, and I'm inspired daily by the work that team deliver there. They're a nurturing company that allows artists across Scotland to flourish. They're a values-driven team whose support in the sector has enabled it to grow exponentially and for a wide range of people, dance styles and ability. They champion artists and the care they provide the sector is second to none. Their delivery and approach really does support artists across the breadth of Scotland, and I believe their work is a great example of being artist-led, responsive, and enabling artists to work where they are. This is a prime example of a centralised company genuinely providing support and opportunity for artists to flourish in their communities, which in turn supports participatory arts in rural settings. At Shetland Arts, I work across art form and across projects. What excites me most is providing opportunity, nurturing artists, particularly island-based, and finding ways to connect with people and celebrating the breadth of artistic delivery that we have in our isles. I wrote and am managing our 3-year commissioning strategy, which has 6 varied opportunities for artists to engage with, including support for training, which is really important because if you are living in a city, you might have access to regular class or regular programs that you can continue to feed your practice. But actually, if you're living here, you might need that support to leave the island to get access to training. Generation of new works, which is something to counteract the regular visiting artists performing here. Participation project, retail product development, and ring-fenced emerging artist support. Authenticity and originality is often at the core of what's delivered, and I'm yet to not be impressed and completely in awe of the work that's created through these strands. The commissions are always oversubscribed. The breadth of creative activity happening in Shetland is vast. Through Culture Collective and Scottish Government, we're delivering an inter-island project called Even Here, Even Now. I was thrilled that this was mentioned in the Scottish Government's Island Plan. We love Creative Scotland's Touring Fund as it allows us to programme work that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. And we had a visiting artist through this in all the real and the activity going on here. They said that they just couldn't believe how much was happening even here. And when I shared the story to the 6 artists who made the manifesto, who were from Orkney, Shetland and the Outer Hebrides, it struck a chord and the name was born. We're determined to not be an afterthought, but instead an example of excellence of community resilience, problem solving, creative thinking, representation and intergenerational and inter-art form work. By nature, Shetland is a creative place. I studied community arts and then a postgraduate diploma in community dance, and on both occasions kept thinking how naturally the things we aim for elsewhere unfold in island communities. Even Here, Even Now is an interesting topic for the delivery of this panel. It's a programme that highlights the abilities and qualities of artists in our communities and connects them, providing them opportunity, well-being and support. It helps showcase how artists can reach those that others can't. As part of this project, we aim to provide advocacy training for artists so that they can advocate effectively for their role within communities. Artists think outside the box and have aspirations for them, and we have aspirations for them to be at decision-making tables, delivering on strategy that can affect us all. Even Here, Even Now is not an Arts for Wellbeing programme in its entirety, but it still very much so connects to the title of this call because it aims to form meaningful connections between artists, islands and their communities. It has so far been delivered in Shetland, Orkney and the Outer Hebrides, and we're looking to expand the project to other Scottish islands. Shetland has a number of participatory arts activities, and they're not always framed as such. We have fire festivals, agricultural shows, and many a music festival. A lot of these involve and require a considerable amount of volunteer work, which has been a real strength of Shetland in the past. However, I do wonder with the cost of living crisis if we need to be advocating for different ways to do things, as if only a certain demographic can afford to volunteer, we'll end up with activity only being run by a demographic that can afford to do so. In contrast to this, we have 3 multi-year funded arts organisations, which is more that we've often just had 1. So it was really exciting to have 3. All of these deliver participatory arts activity in rural context. Other than Shetland Arts, these are GADA and Bigton Collective, and they're both fantastic, and I'd encourage you to learn more about them. Something else that is island specific that I just have to mention is travel. My colleague laughed at me last year when I said that slow travel was a phrase regularly used in the arts as an aspiration for being greener and more mindful. Distances can be a barrier to opportunities and connection. Obviously not today though. Lovely to see so many of you from across Scotland and further afield. We want fast travel. Our journeys are often precarious and very slow. And I'm petrified of the recent cost increase of fuel and how this will affect all participatory arts in rural communities. It can often be tricky to access things without regular buses, and our lifeline services to the Scottish mainland are always expensive and precarious. This seems to be ever increasing at the moment, and I believe that this will have an adverse effect on our communities, and in particularly our ability to expand any provision and keep us connected. Our hybrid meeting today actually has people streaming from Real in another room and is a great example of bringing us together physically as well as remotely. Shetland Arts has a number of wellbeing activities, wellbeing arts projects, which I've managed in the past. However, it's managed by different people now. And I do think that it's worthwhile sharing some of my past experience about this. So I've managed a project before where we've delivered dance in prisons and then delivered that same dance provision in areas where inmates were released to, so that they had consistency and continuation between their life inside and outside. I used to teach a dance for dementia class here in Shetland, and I really love connecting with people through movement. I teach a weekly yoga class, which is the highlight of my week. This is at my local community hall. Shetland has around 50 community halls, which are mostly busy places used by communities surrounding them. Back to the yoga, I think connecting through movement is so often overlooked. We can connect without words and leave our days behind us for our movement session. We meet people there where they are, we see their bodies and we feel our bodies doing marvellous things. That first deep breath and the nourishment and reassurance that comes with it makes us question why we don't give ourselves those juicy, mindful, present breaths all the time. And yet we always need reminded. Maybe it's that shared space, that moment where we're breathing together that reminds us of humanity and each other and how we have everything that we need inside us. And that's why I believe so much for arts for well-being. We really can connect in ways that you just can't get from something else. Rural communities often flourish in these pockets of well-being and participation provision, but they're often overlooked in national campaigns. Not this one, obviously, we're all here. And this might always be the way, because the beauty of them doesn't come from shouting about them, but it comes from delivering them where we are. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. That was brilliant. A great place to start us off. I'm really conscious to give a bit of my background. I've worked in arts and health, as I say, for 15 years. I've delivered arts and mental health social prescription, visual arts programs within Stirling. And although Stirling is a city, I'm conscious that many of our participants actually had to travel from more rural areas to come to us. I have delivered arts enhancements within the Children's Hospital in Edinburgh, and I have worked with Luminate, Scotland's creative ageing organisation, delivering projects across Scotland, including bringing artists to the Isle of Skye, specifically working on dementia. I'd like to invite our panelists to sort of answer the following question. And I also would like to invite our attendees, because I'm really delighted to see that a lot of you are from across Scotland and further afar internationally. And I noticed that a number of you are actually working in rural locations. So please feel free to let us know what you think. And if you have thought about a question, then please do raise your hands. But asking Catherine, Andrew, and Stephanie, living and working in different rural locations and having engaged with participatory projects across Scotland, are you able to identify what is different or unique to working in your locations or rural locations that you have engaged with? Does anyone want to start?
I don't mind jumping in if
Yeah.
okay. I mean, there are certain things that all the islands have in common. I mean, kind of really obvious things to do with just the kind of the sheer distance from the kind of I guess the sort of center of gravity of the arts. But I mean, in terms of Lewis, I think the most obviously distinctive thing about where I am is Gaelic. I mean, obviously Gaelic is spoken in a lot of places. I should emphasize that, and there's a lot of Gaelic speakers all over Scotland. But I guess we're kind of the heartland of Gaelic culture, and you kind of really feel that here. And by that, I don't just mean the language. I mean, there are artists here who make visual artists here who make a point of identifying as Gaelic visual artists. So there's a way of looking at the world which is sort of arguably quite specific to Gaelic culture. I mean, the other thing famously about, or infamously about Lewis, is that everything is closed on a Sunday. And which has religious origins, obviously, but quite often gets a bad press, quite kind of smearing press. But I love it, actually. It's been very good for my mental health, to be honest with you. Because we kind of live in this 24-hour culture where we expect everything to be immediately available to us kind of all the time. I don't think that's good for us. I mean, other people, I mean, I don't necessarily speak for the island on that view. People have different views on it, but that's my thoughts on it. And the other thing is that artists, I mean, this is common to all of the islands, I think, but artists are absolutely kind of embedded in their communities. I mean, one of my neighbours here is Louise Scullion, who's a really kind of well-known, internationally regarded contemporary artist of Dael and Scullion. She makes decorations for like Christmas fair and community events. You know, she really gets kind of stuck in terms of community events. And that classical music playing somewhere. Yes, and that's very common to artists here. You know, very well-known, very established artists who will be very kind of involved in their community, and that's part of life here.
Thank you,
I
Catherine.
can.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry. No.
We're going to do this awkward Zoom polite thing, aren't we? I completely agree with, I would replicate everything that Andrew said, and would, except for the Gaelic culture, that is not part of Shetland at all. And we have a Shetland language, or yeah, it's getting recognised as a language as we speak. The two things that come to mind when you ask that question, Catherine, are intergenerational work, which really is at the core of a lot of the delivery. I was speaking about the dance piece that I made last year, and I was just kind of making it for grown-ups. I wasn't really thinking about working with children in specific, but I had the first sharing at Bigton Community Hall, which is across the hill from where I live. And of course, lots of kids come, and actually even just engaging with them through workshops and through the voices, that immediately happens. And it was only actually when I was taking the work elsewhere that I was thinking about, oh, who is this specifically for? Because so often you'd think about how something is for everyone, because if you're putting something on in a small place, you don't want to exclude anyone in that community. So you immediately make something that is relevant for people to just bring their kids along to, bring their grannies along to, and it just becomes something for everyone. I also think something that I really enjoy about Shetland is we're always really proud of the achievements of Shetlanders. So I think as soon as someone is making art or is doing well in sport, people really shout about one another and celebrate the achievements of the whole community. I think Andrew mentioned kind of a Gaelic aesthetic. We definitely have an island aesthetic, which I think is relevant across a lot of Scottish islands, and it can be really quite distinctive. And I love when this is represented beyond our island shores, because it really helps summarise and showcase the breadth of activity happening across Scotland. And I think so often this can be a blend of traditional and contemporary work. I also think that one last thing is the quality is often really, really high. And actually the aspiration isn't always to go beyond Shetland. One of my cousins is an incredible fiddle player, and I've never ever seen them play out of a community hall that's on one of the islands, and I don't think they ever want to. And they do that completely just so that they are practicing their skill for them. And there's something about that islandness as well that sometimes we don't always want to look further, and that people try really hard, quality is exceptionally high, and sometimes it's for one another.
Brilliant. Thank you, Catherine. Stephanie.
What I love about what both Catherine and Andrew have specified is that the quality on the islands are second to none when it comes to the arts, sport, culture, and community-driven representation. As Catherine specified, we have exactly the same kind of culture where we will absolutely shout from the rooftops about different people that are doing well and representing the islands. not just our island, it can be a multitude of islands. It's really tough living in a rural space when it comes to being seen. But we as the community, we see one another, and the breadth of what is coming from Orkney in particular, because I've not really researched Shetland and the Isle of Lewis, apart from really kind of pushing it now since I kind of met the board. But in Orkney, there's so much things that are happening. We've got like a band that are traveling all over the world, supporting Orkney's kind of delivery. One of our radio hosts, he plays in bands as well and travels all over the world, Marcus Cordock, who I went to school with. I set about looking for this archive of Florrie Sinclair, a pioneering world RAD kind of, I don't know what you would kind of describe her as, but she kind of put the Royal Academy of Dance syllabus all over the world in the night from 1955 all the way through to 1987, traveling the world. And I couldn't find this archive anywhere. And lo and behold, it was in Ola Gore's, the world famous jewellery designers. It was in her garage. And then Ola Gore's in her 80s now, her husband's in his 90s. It was her husband, sister, who was originally Florrie Tate, and now she married a Sinclair not from Orkney. And I spent a year looking through this archive, and I found photos of Darcy Bustle and Florrie together, the opening of the Singapore Ballet School, and you know what, that was just found in one of the most renowned jewellery designers in north of Scotland, who pioneered and was a bit of a feminist and pushed the boat out for jewellery and design and women being able to kind of push themselves forward into that kind of industry. And then Sheila Fleet, people like Sheila Fleet and Ortac followed in that kind of realm. So that's just kind of like one area. What I love about Orkney and what's really working well is the conversation between different organisations doing and working within the space of mental health. And what I'm seeing within MS Orkney Society, all the way through to the Blythe Trust, the Pure Art Centre, these are all non-for-profit or charitable organisations. Their delivery in arts health and participatory arts is incredible. It's very, very strong. Intergenerational work is something that's been going on here for quite some time, especially in my practice. And we've had people like Penny Chivvis, who's done intergenerational work, Sharon Tuxenzaya. And what we do with our artists that come, we've got Vince Farr coming next week, and Vince will be here for the whole week. And the first thing we ask them is not about the performances, it's actually what is your community engagement and what are you comfortable with? So Vince's company will spend 3 hours with the AGS, the Kirkwall Grammar School, and 12 participants will perform live with them on Tuesday night next week and outside the St Magnus Cathedral. All the performances are free, and these young people who are aspiring dancers will get to work with a very renowned dance artist and his company and hear how they make a pathway for themselves in the industry. But not just that, Vince is also going to work with our adult classes, and we're going to open that up to the community so that adults can come in and learn. So an intergenerational kind of understanding is something that is absolutely the forefront of a lot of work that I do in Orkney, but I know that there are a lot of intergenerational conversations because intergenerational Scotland come here quite a lot and we work with them, as well as our arts officer, Emma G, the Pure Art Centre normally in on these meetings, education. We have a breadth of opportunity within the education sector here for adult learners. There's weaving classes, fiddle classes, all the way through to textile. It's just a breadth of what's happening here, and it's taught and delivered by very experienced and well-informed practitioners. Something that I'm learning more and more and more, because I am based primarily on dance, but I do really enjoy getting my nose into what other people are getting up to and figuring out how it could maybe align or understand it in a deeper context so that it makes my practice better as well. And the last thing I'll leave you with is the conversations of inclusion. And we talk about inclusion, it's such a it's such a grey area. There's so much inclusion that you can discuss, but the biggest one is Inclusive Orkney and the community spirits of this organisation. It's put together by a group of mums who are also teachers who have children with additional support needs. And to date, a young boy who is learning how to walk and is doing a great job of it. He raised nearly £100,000 in the space of 3 months for this charity from the local community by just walking around his house every day and seeing him get stronger every day. He's raised money for this organisation, Inclusive Orkney. And what they're doing with that money is allowing young people and children to do sport, allowing them to do art classes, song classes, and it's all free. It's completely free to the community. And one of my children is actually delayed in development, and he goes along to this offering of Inclusion Orkney. And the joy I seen last Sunday with all of these children smiling, happy, growing. Community spirit is key, along with just touching upon what Andrew said about the tongue. You know, Orkney is like Shetland and it has its own dialect, and a lot of people, if you hear a broad Orcadian speak, it is the most beautiful and can sometimes be very confusing for somebody that's not, you know, maybe from Scotland or from Orkney that can't really understand. But once you hear the palette, it's like a work of art in itself. It's poetry in motion. The dialect and people like John Mackay, I can't remember his name, but the famous poet who used to go out to Hoy and write his poetry, George Mackay Brown. There you go, got him. His poetry is very much in deep Orkney dialect, and when you read it and you can understand it properly, it really does hit a note of where we are. It's a deep-rooted cultural, slow-paced way of life, but the offering of the arts is strong. It's definitely not weak. So yeah, that's my answer to the question.
Brilliant. Thank you all. It's really fascinating how to hear, even within 3 different rural locations, how there are some key themes coming through, like language, celebrations of your community, about your skill development, and the fact that you have such amazing artists within your locations. But I love the fact that actually sometimes you would have to go to these locations to actually experience that, which I think keeps a rural location really, really special. We're starting to get some questions coming through, but I'll just move on to my next question, and that is, for all of the panelists, what are some of the challenges that you have found that are faced by rural communities in regards to mental health? And that could be across accessing services, it could be across travels. What have you found within your community? I recognise that our 3 panelists are coming from an arts background, so I think this is probably going to be more reflective of what you've seen and in your engagement. Catherine, can I go to you first?
Yeah, just to know, I'm definitely answering this as kind of arts and Shetland arts and not broader, because I don't feel qualified to do so. I would say one of the main, sorry, let me just get up your question. I always like to come back to it. One of the main challenges for us is definitely transport. I've already mentioned it, but it definitely needs amplified, particularly now because our Lifeline service are cutting some of our routes, which is really disappointing. Yes, transport's very limited. It's expensive. It's really, really expensive. And it's often affected by weather and aging vessels. Connections, even those within island groups, are often precarious and they're frequently cancelled. I think digital connectivity is often insufficient to mitigate challenges of distance. Collaborators, networks, and peers can often be and feel far away. And that's something, working as an artist is something I really miss. So when I lived in a city, then I would go along to a dance class. I'm a dance artist, and that would actually be my place where I might connect with future collaborators, and I could connect with people through movement. The connecting with future collaborators is really important because it's something to recognise, because I think it really does affect the well-being of artists and is a challenge for participatory arts in our community. Because so often, if we're working with collaborators from further afield, so there's not many dance artists up here, I might need to connect with people from further from away. But if I'm not continually meeting them, I'm only meeting those people when I have funding. And that changes the dynamic completely, because you might be able to form a community by attendance otherwise. And doing that rurally, doing it remotely, completely changes that connection for people. I think that distances are a continual barrier for opportunities and audiences, and that this is within the islands and not just looking at islands going further away, further afield. I live in the south end of the island, which is where the airport is. And so we have a really brilliant bus service, and that means there's a bus every 2 hours. So actually, if you have caring responsibilities, or if you have access needs and don't want to be hanging about for a couple of hours before something starts, that can still very much so be a barrier.
Brilliant. Thank you. Steph, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I echo every single thing that Catherine has specified. Um, for myself, being a dance artist based in Orkney, it's been a lonely journey, and it's something that I would definitely echo on in regards to the fact that I can't just go take a class. I do need funding to get off the island. It's extremely expensive, and for example, we've got flights with a group of young people going to Glasgow on the 3rd of July, and the flight, even though we had booked it for the 7:30 flying, the flight times have been changed by Flybe, and we're going to be nearly 3 or 4 hours late for the start of our rehearsal schedule in Glasgow. And then if we were to fly the day before, we still got then another extra day of hotels. So it's very costly, and it's very heart breaking when you can't get to where you want to go when you want to go because of these kind of interruptions it's just out with your control. I would also echo in regards to, I work a lot on an outer island called North Walls or Hoy. And what I find is sometimes the ferries can be cancelled due to the fact that the ferry's broken down, or that it's in refit, so they're on a very kind of different timetabling schedule. It might not work for me, being a mum, having to get home for my own children. So it can be just even in the island itself, for you to be able to do your work, it can sometimes be quite challenging. And what I find with that is that you end up making different arrangements and making it work in different ways. And I wonder if that other artists probably could feel the same way in other mediums, and other genres, because if I feel that, then surely others might feel that too. But I do echo everything. I can't add much more than what Catherine has already added. I think has added everything that we would probably discuss between ourselves. It can be very lonely at times for some things. So that's the answer to my question.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Andrew, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would echo a lot of that. I mean, in Lewis, you're kind of caught between a ferry that may well be cancelled due to weather, and an aeroplane that's extraordinarily expensive. And also they're reducing the flights to Inverness now, which has been a bit of a controversial subject on the island. But even within the island, I mean, it's I mean, I work at Atlanta in Stornoway, but I live an hour away from there. And if I didn't have a car, which quite a surprising number of people don't, that's like two or three buses a day. So, you know, you're in Stornoway for the whole day or you're not really. So, but I mean, one of the things I found as an incomer was that I think I sort of assumed that everybody knew each other because it's this fairly small population, but it's not the case at all. I mean, even among the kind of creative community, there are people who I kind of assumed would know each other who don't, because we're all kind of scattered around in villages around the island for the most part. So as a creative person, that can be quite isolating. Man, I find that one of the biggest issues for artists here actually is a sort of lack of confidence. I've met a lot of intensely creative people who would be really hesitant about actually describing them as artists. I mean, there's a question in the chat: how do we support the well-being of the artist in all this? And I would say to that it's about, a lot of it is about peer support, and it's about kind of actually just creating social spaces. I mean, one of the things I do for Unlanta is I run a thing called an artist gathering, which is like a monthly event, social event for anybody creative. It doesn't have to be kind of working artists or professional artists. Anybody who wants to is making anything really. We have a couple of speakers every month talking about their work, but mostly it's just an opportunity for a whole bunch of people to be in a room together. And you get so many, I mean, there's been a kind of few collaborations and friendships that have kind of grown out of that, and from people who had no idea these other people somewhere else on the island were doing something kind of similar to them. So that's good for confidence, and it's good for helping with isolation. Yeah.
Can I just jump in on it? Because I've got a couple, I keep seeing the questions popping up and trying to make some notes, but also something was really relevant to what Andrew said just there, and Lindsay Dunbar's question about how we support the well-being of artists in all of this. I'm not trying to say that we're doing everything at all for it, and there's definitely more that could be done. But I thought a response could be sharing what Shetland Arts Artist Development Programme is, which ties in very nicely to what Andrew was just saying about artist meetups and bringing people together, because I think that is so the core of community and actually sometimes enabling these conversations. So we have quarterly artist meetups, and they happen in the daytime and then in the evening, daytime, evening, so that we try and make it accessible for everybody. They're £2 to attend, which is the same as our Wellbeing Arts, tying in a little bit to the financial question. They always, if they're in the evening, you get tea, coffee and biscuits. If it's in the day, you get soup. So that money really does go quite far, and you get your session. We find that having a cost attached to both of those things is really important for making sure that we minimize as many no-shows as we can, because often when things are free, actually people don't show up. Thinking about the well-being of artists in all of this, the artist development programme that we have at Shetland Arts is the artist meetups. We also offer mentoring support. I think that paying artists appropriately is the main thing that is important here, because it's appropriate recompense for what's happening and what's being delivered. And there can be a lot of tourism involved in this. So we've had experiences where knitters or textile makers, people are coming up and they're wanting to engage, but they don't actually want to pay for their time or their day. So we actually try and make sure that we are always advocating for an appropriate payment of artists. And I think that is a real big one for making sure that the well-being of artists is considered, because if you're working for free, that never, ever feels good. Our commissions and our funding programmes are really big parts of that, because they offer up to £10,000 at a localised level, which can go quite far if you're just working with local participants. And I think that not only does that show that you don't need to go further to support, to find expertise because they're here, but they actually give you money and to work here to create that work. And I think that that is a really important part of looking after artist well-being. Also, Mariel, something that happens that I don't know if it happens elsewhere. When I worked south, I didn't see any examples of this, but I think it's something worth celebrating, is that actually the local community have quite a lot of involvement in the programming here. So we have a few local programmers who we have a deal with, that they can present their work, or they do big country nights where they bring all the musicians together. And these are often sellout events. People earn, these local programmers get money from it. And it's also an opportunity to showcase the work that's happening. We haven't started the next phase of Even Here, Even Now, but when we do, there will be a lot of artist development in that and artist support. Sorry, now I feel like I'm rambling on, Catherine. I'm sorry.
Not at all. You're absolutely actually linking into my next question. So it's really interesting to hear about sort of digital in connectivity and transport and funding and weather. Let's not forget weather being things. And so actually, Catherine, you started to answer beautifully. My next question was going to be, what innovative ways, oh, I can never say that word, apologies, innovative ways have you used the participatory arts to support some of these things that impact on people's mental health and the communities and the artists? So, Catherine, that was a brilliant start. I don't know if any of you want to talk more.
I could jump in unless Stephanie you want to. Yeah, I was trying to think of examples of, I mean, of kind of participatory arts projects in Lewis that might be appropriate. I mean, one that jumped out, just a recent one is was done by Unlanta's education and outreach team, who are really great at what they do, and it was a thing called Mystery Hotel, where it was a series of hotel rooms where everybody got to make their own little hotel room, and they're going to be as imaginative as they like within this little space. And I think there were 80 of them, which were all kind of put together in Unlanta's gallery to create this huge kind of model. And every single hotel room was designed, made by a different person in Lewis. And some people just got on with it, and some people had support to do it. But the people making them ranged from school kids to kind of professional artists. And what I loved about it, I mean, there are photos online of it, which I'll maybe share because it's a really beautiful thing. But what I loved about it was a great kind of leveler in terms of as you could be a 12-year-old kid, as my daughter was at the time when she took part in this, and your room would be next door to something that was created by a professional artist. And actually, because of the kind of format of the thing, and it was all to do with kind of your imagination, and the rooms made by people who had never made art before were just often quite just as imaginative as anything else in the hotel. So yeah, I don't know. As a participatory arts project, I thought that was really successful. It was one of the most popular things in the gallery at Unlanta earlier this year, because everybody wanted to show their family or their friends what they'd made and compare their room with everybody else's room and see what ideas other people would come up with. So that kind of, yeah. Anyway, that just jumped to mind as a nice project.
Brilliant, thank you, Stephanie. Do you have anything?
The Nook is something that is run by an artist partnership. Emma Lanesley, I think her name is, and they work in collaboration with the Peer Art Centre. And the Nook is like an artistic for neurodivergent artists and working in any medium, or even if they just are a creative, not actually producing work for sale or work for showcasing. And what they do is they kind of run like charity opportunities. Like for instance, this week they're doing a yoga class at the Peer Art Centre for folk in that kind of group, in that community. I can never get along because I'm always teaching on a Saturday and it's always on a Saturday. So it's kind of a bittersweet thing talking about this. But I think that Emma has really pushed the boat out with this, and it's something that's very new to Orkney. And I definitely think that there could be something that we could learn from each other in regards to the island. And it sounds like what Shetland are doing with the I can't say that word. I'm not going to try and say that word. But it sounds as though maybe Orkney could be doing with a little bit more of following in the footsteps of Shetland Arts in regards to that. I think more could be done for the artists here. There are a lot of instances where artists don't get paid for their work. Normally what we find with a lot of the festivals or that maybe the outsourced artists that come in are paid, but the locals it's just like, you're getting a bit of publicity. So it'd be nice to kind of really think about how we not just, as Catherine said, not just support our artists' mental health and well-being, but also actually thinking about that they need paid fairly for their work. So I definitely think there's maybe a more conversation to be had with this. And I would definitely be keen to hear more about what Shetland are up to see if there could be something that could happen in regards to this. Something that came out of the back of this conversation of doing the Healing Arts Festival, because we've got performances happening in a few hours at the Balfour Hospital. And I've collected up some of the MS Society paintings because they have an arts class that they do once a week. Chatting to the MS Society, they've got something that could be very, very useful to other people that are living with lifelong conditions. And I wonder, the person that I was speaking to was stating that it would be nice to be able to collaborate or meet and kind of discuss what each of them are doing, so that maybe, you know, these pieces of equipment could be actually very beneficial to somebody living with early signs of dementia, or somebody living with Parkinson's. And the groups, even though we're in a community, they're kind of sticking with their own community. So it's about kind of allowing people to kind of have a place to come and chat. And it's really hard when especially when you're somebody living or working or caring for somebody with a long health condition such as MS. The fact that it's not that they're not collaborating or meeting with each other because they don't want to. It's sometimes because the time just hasn't been allocated and they've not found the time. So could there be something more involved with the community groups such as that, with arts groups in particular, to kind of possibly do some kind of caring networking event so that it could help bridge the gap? So that's what that came from a conversation yesterday. That was an interesting one. But when you get chatting to folk, you learn about what actually that could resonate here, that could be translated here. So this is why this kind of thing is really important, to kind of highlight what others are doing and what we're doing, and see if it aligns, and see if you could actually try and do something of a similar nature.
Brilliant, thank you. Catherine, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what Stephanie just said with 2 examples of organisations that have provision that works with what you're talking about. One of them is Big Thing Collective, which is one of the multi-year funded organisations in Shetland, and they have a support group for parents of children with disabilities, and they engage with them through music and arts. They meet weekly. They're working with a music therapist, and it's a brilliant group, really informal, and is going really well. And then the other one that I wanted to highlight, you mentioned caring responsibilities. I feel like I always have a million things to like show and tell, which isn't actually what I should be doing at this at all. But I have a Re-Emerging, which is a choreography of parenting, which is from the workroom. And they brought together artists working in dance who were all parents, and they created kind of a support pack. And it's really excellent, and we have some of them available at Shetland Arts. They got more funding to deliver this, so there is kind of workshops happening across Scotland. I don't know much more about it to say, but I just thought I would highlight because it's a really brilliant resource and really tastefully done. Related back to some of the kind of key challenges in rural locations, then I was thinking about our island groups, and there is an island that is 2 ferries away, and you have to drive to another island to get there, so that can feel quite far. And when thinking about this, or places that are living kind of geographically sparse, we've kind of created our lunchtime concerts. And this means that, because sometimes it's difficult to go to something in the evening if the ferry timetables don't work, and these have been really great. They're kind of building in momentum. They're also an opportunity for local artists to perform, so they're predominantly done by local artists. It's done by a call out, which also means that can be more accessible for some people because it can highlight the opportunity. And that kind of brought me back to kind of panels, my thinking around panels. And I feel like I just want to say it. I assume that we're all doing it, but it's kind of just advocating for that best practice just in case it's not. It's always having freelance artists on the panels as well as people that are employed. And we always mix up who's on those so that it's never one person or never just a group of people that are making the decisions. That always changes. And these freelance artists based in Shetland, and they always get paid for this time. They get paid for the reading time, and they get paid for being part of the panel. And we had a panel a few weeks ago, and it kind of got brought up. I felt like I was advocating for artists to be paying themselves for development time. So it was just bringing up for that pay, and that how are we supporting artists and their mental well-being. And it's kind of making sure that that recompense and that pay is happening across every stage of what's needed for delivery.
Brilliant. Thank you. I am aware there are a number of questions that have come in through the chat. I know brilliantly the panelists have been answering some of them as we go along. I want to go back to, and apologies, maybe the pronunciation. Is it Raluca or I don't know if you want to ask your question or if you do, feel free to put your camera on. If not, I'm happy to ask. But it is so I'm just having a quick look. What is the panelists' experience regarding the need to train artists to do this type of work? So they're about to publish a position paper alongside, wow, 125 co-authors. This is set on global recommendations for tertiary music schools regarding how we would make musicians training healthier and more sustainable. So yes, what is your experience of how we train artists to sort of deliver this sort of work? Is there something that happens in rural locations which is different to here? I'm in the city of Dundee at the moment.
I think that particularly looking at music in specific, then it's about introduction at an early age and that being free and accessible and that being delivered through the education system. And I know that that's something that has previously been really celebrated in Shetland. I can't give you an up-to-date version on this because there's been a few things happening of late, but that definitely kind of introduces it young and showcases that learning, practicing and performing is part of life. I think something that's also a bit tricky for me to answer. So you're saying preparing the musicians for the kind of work that we're talking about. Actually, sometimes these musicians might not class themselves as professional because they work in a different field and they are brilliant at their hobbyists' delivery. And actually, that is something that we come up across quite a lot working in Shetland, because I think when you live and work in an island community, you become jack of all trades. So actually, you might not be giving yourself fully to one art form and saying, oh, I'm a good example. I'm not saying, hey, I'm a professional dancer, because I'm definitely not at the moment. I'm doing my arts administration job and I'm also getting to choreograph when I can, which at the moment is absolutely none of the time. But that's just now. But I think that is something that you're saying, yes, it's something that we're describing, but it's also something that can be really difficult because actually you can lose a lot of artists to that. And I think it's going to become ever increasing challenge because of the cost of living crisis and travel and access to things.
Brilliant, thank you. Andrew or Stephanie, do you want to add anything to that? Yes, Stephanie, please.
In Orkney, we have the Orkney Traditional Music Project, and that has its own department at the Orkney Isles Council Education Department. Children in schools in Orkney receive private music tuition from around about 8 years old. That's in fiddle, piano, violin, cello, guitar. I think I said all of those. Ukulele. My son is in high school. He plays trumpet as part of the Orkney Traditional Music Project. So as they go up the pipeline or up the ladder in a sense in their education, they are given more and more opportunity to play. 95% of the Curriculum for Excellence fund that goes into Orkney Isles Council education sector for schools goes towards private music tuition, and 5% goes towards drama, and nothing goes towards dance at the moment. But we are in the process of changing that conversation. So that's kind of how it runs out. What I find is a lot of young people end up becoming a huge part of the Orkney Traditional Music Project, and then they go on to do the Strathspey Reel bands. There's like the West Strathspey Reel band, there's the East Strathspey Reel band, there's a Northern the outer islands. They all have their kind of own Strathspey Reel bands as well. So a lot of kids, I mean, I know a family who are in the west mainland of Orkney Strathspey Reel band, which is based in Stena. And I know a granddad and a grandmother the son and all of his nieces, there's about 5 of them, all in the exact same Strathspey Rail band. So when they go to like maybe community events and playing, there is like about 20, 30, 40 people playing fiddle, and they're all interconnected and intergenerational. It's an amazing thing to witness. Not just to mentioning the pipe band here, the Orkney pipe band and the Stromness pipe band. Sadly, the pipe band, I've got a community hall just behind my house called the Rendell Community Hall, and their band, which had been going for 50 years, just actually sadly closed its doors to the pipe band just a few years ago, and it was quite sad. We could always hear the drums and the pipes in our house from like 100 yards away. So music is definitely something that is such an array here, and I would definitely say that more and more people, like Catherine said, a lot of them don't think of themselves as professional, but they probably really should. Most of the time, they do have like what we would class as a normal job, doing something else, and then that is like their passion is their fiddle or their violin or the piano. But most of the musicians here are incredible, like unbelievable.
Brilliant. Thank you. Andrew, do you have anything to add, or shall I go on to the next question?
Yeah, I guess just quickly, it's about all the stuff that goes on around what's going on in schools, what's going on in the community, I think. As an example, there's a recording studio and record label here called We Studio, who've been brilliant at giving free studio space to young musicians to try recording, and for the first time, they just set up a new thing called the Stornoway Music Centre, which is kind of a rehearsal space in town where you can go and rehearse for a very, very small amount of money, so yeah, so those kind of things are really important. It's everything that goes on around it, but music is a massive part of the culture here. There's a mod, obviously. There's kids here kind of grow up surrounded by music, but a certain amount of it relies on kind of, I guess, professional music people giving their time in a kind of community spirited sort of way. But a lot of it comes down to funding as well. I mean, Onlanta is doing various music events for young people at the moment, but that is being funded through the Youth Music Initiative, and these things may not happen if that funding wasn't there.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to combine, Bronwyn's put in a question from Mariel at Shetland Arts from our attendees there. This question with Jan Bert's question, which is further down. So the first part of the question is, we're interested in hearing more about financial inclusion and access to arts service, particularly given the extremely high cost of living in island areas, and I'd add to that rural areas. And Jan Bert has added support for people with enduring mental ill health in communities is crumbling and eroded by continual program of public sector funding reductions. And the third sector organisations that support them, so not just reductions to services, but the third sector organisations who deliver it. So what is the role of arts and creative practice in supporting a route to thinking differently and creating new positive ways where we can address these problems collectively and positively? And how do we address this funding inclusion or exclusion? Sorry, that was a lot of question at once. So do you want to break down, Catherine, could you talk a bit more? I know you've put in the chat about how you've addressed funding inclusion.
Hi, yes. This one's just a really quick response as well because I was trying to listen at the same time. But Shetland Arts gives free tickets to anchor families and for young carers. And we also have a card scheme where disabled people can take a carer with them free to the cinema or to one of our gigs to try and make this more inclusive. Talking about I'm trying to respond to the cost. I think that there's a particularly high level of fuel poverty in Shetland. I don't know the statistics for Orkney and Outer Hebrides, where Andrew and Steph are, but I think that is something that we really need to address. But at the same time, I think organisations are really struggling, and the cost of living crisis is also affecting them, and energy bills. Mariel has 2 cinema screens and a really large auditorium. Our costs have shot up completely. So as much as we're trying to have a price point that aims with inclusion at its core, we're also trying to make sure that we can sustain ourselves as an organisation. And that's continually a push and a pull. I think I'm trying to touch on all the little questions that were there. And it kind of brought me back to why I spoke a little bit about some of my freelance work in kind of the introduction, is because my aspirations for what we could do as part of our wellbeing arts are well beyond what we can actually deliver just at Shetland Arts. And I think that comes back to rural communities and what our capacities might be for delivering for different groups of people. Because if you were living in a more highly populated area, you might have different things that different organisations that you go to for different things. So when I was living in Aberdeen, then I did all my dance classes at City Moves, and when I wanted to do visual art, I went to Peacocks. But at Shetland Arts, we're trying to be a little bit of everything for everyone. And that does mean that sometimes we can't go as deep as we might like to, but actually we're trying to be able to do some provision some of the time. And that does mean that we don't always please everybody, and we're not often doing exactly enough of what somebody might want. And I guess that's where kind of our handover of some programming is really beneficial. Our specific funds, such as the Culture Collective, are really letting us enable artists to work within their communities. Sorry, I think I'm starting to ramble. Maybe I think once it gets to 20 past now.
That's brilliant. I think that's sort of answering some of the role of art and creative practice and supporting the route to think differently. So I think picking up on that, being a bit of everything to everyone, is one of the ways that we address those needs. I'm really conscious that there are lots of questions coming in. I'm just trying to have a sort of look down. So Kai is asking if you work interdisciplinaries with mediums, so dance, drama together with arts, music together with drama, art with music, and how you encourage that. So sort of carrying on with that, Catherine, when you're having to deliver for everything, how do you do that to meet the needs?
I'm actually going to answer that one as a freelance artist, because I would love to work with more dance artists, but there's not a lot of them up here. So I actually started making screen dance and dance film. And that was because there's filmmakers living in the village beside mine. And actually, that's so often a beauty of island living, is you work with who you've got, what you've got. And actually, sometimes those art forms link together more than they might do otherwise, because you might not be able to find your tribe specifically, me finding contemporary dancers, but you actually find people from different art forms working in different ways that you can still make art with.
Brilliant, thank you. Andrew or Stephanie, do you want to answer any of the 3 questions that have been posed? If you can remember them all, I'm happy to recap.
I'm happy to answer the one about kind of teaming up with other artists. It's something that I've done for quite a few years now, coming back as a pro dancer, working with people like Louise Barrington, Dylan Pepper, bringing in other dance artists to work in Orkney for large scale projects. We've ran a few inclusive dance projects that have housed not just looking at inclusive dance practice, but also music therapy. The very first project we did was back in 2022 in collaboration with Orkney House Council, and we brought on a very experienced drummer called Dylan Pepper, who is a really lifelong friend of mine. We went to school together, and the reason why I wanted to work so intensively with him in particular was because he works in care, and he has a background in working with young people. So there's a level above and beyond just the music and the fact that he was quite willing to let people touch his drums, especially children. We had one in particular who was blind and non-verbal. So to enable this young person to really experience the whole thing, we allowed him to just touch everywhere. He was right under the foot pedals. He was touching the drumsticks. He was banging different parts of the drums. And what he was doing was he was looking for the vibration. So it's something that I particularly am quite passionate about, working with different artists. We've brought in different videographers. We've always tried to work with local artists when we've brought in dance companies or collaborated with dance companies who are showing their work here. We've brought in videographers, we've brought in technicians. We normally say to folks, this is what we've got, this is a list of who we know, and hopefully we can work with who we've got here so that we're bringing in more opportunity for the local landscape as well as the outsourced company coming in. So that's something that I feel quite passionate about, actually, and something that I've gone above and beyond to make sure that we kind of try and push the boat out to work collaboratively with other artists on different projects. And I felt that, in fact, Project Hop was the other one. We took, Dylan and I, then the year after 2022, jumped around all the islands. We visited 11 islands in total and taught over 85 children who don't normally get dance provision on their actual island, because we live on the mainland, and we basically just went out to lots of different islands and taught hip hop skills and fundamentals. And Dylan played live, and it was called Project Hop because we were literally doing hip hop, but also hopping from island to island. And it was a really insightful project, and one that I just would love to do again and again and again, because it wasn't just about the skills, it was about the creativity of movement, it was about the creativity of having live music.
Definitely. I'm just going to check again because we're going to run out of time. So Catherine, I'm just aware that I wanted you to touch a little bit on the mental health arts framework, and then there's probably a few of the questions where I might just make a couple of general comments at the end that might be helpful.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, I'm also conscious that Andrew was going to
yeah, sorry, Andrew, do you want to
talk about
on that one?
Scottish?
I'm going to. What was I going to talk about?
The participatory arts publication that you're
There's
working
going
on.
to be a participatory arts good practice and mental health good practice, a resource publication. It'll be out soon. There you go, done.
Brilliant, thank you. Really similarly, as I said at the beginning, I've been commissioned to lead, to coordinate and facilitate a arts and mental health framework. This framework doesn't happen without you. Anyone who is in Scotland who is working in arts, if you're an arts professional, a health professional, a mental health professional who is working within this field, we want to hear with you. We want to come together so that we can co-author and collaborate and create a framework which meets your needs and ambitions, that recognizes the breadth and depth of the work that's happening across Scotland, and something that strengthens and benefits everyone, and captures who we are and shows what we deliver together and helps us create a shared vision. I've put the link in it. You can drop me an email. You can sign up, drop an email to the artsandhealth@creativescotland.com. I'll put my email in this chat and you can reach out to me. But basically, this framework is about everyone who works in this field and will give us much more opportunities to have some of the amazing discussions that have started today. I would like to say my thanks to all the attendees, to Sarah in the background, and to our panelists. And I will hand back now over to Nancy.
Thank you. So I'm just going to flag up that Andrew's put in the chat a link there to do with the Performing Anxiety podcast. I would recommend if anybody wants to watch that, and also hopefully when the new things come out, we'll be working with Scottish Mental Health Arts Festival, Andrew, to see if we can share some of the information when that comes out. So I think there were a few things. I know that we had, obviously things have been thick and fast and conversations been great. One of the other things I think I wanted to highlight was just work across many of the rural locations. I'm down in Dumfries for their Healing Arts Scotland Day today. Obviously Orkney and Shetland, Dundee are going on. I think it's the Borders tomorrow in Edinburgh. But what I see in a lot of the rural areas is the links between healthcare and arts practice are a lot stronger. The conversations happen. I'm not saying, again, a bit like Catherine said earlier, there's nowhere that would say we're where we need to be and everything works brilliantly. But I think sometimes that ability to be able to get people around the table and have conversations about what local communities need and how that can be supported, there's some really great kind of learnings and examples of what that can look like. There's only so much we can ever cover in one call. So what I would ask is if there's areas that you would like to delve into more deeply, or conversations you feel need to be happening in Scotland, where we can bring people together and share sort of practice, experience, ideas, innovation, please get in touch with me. And it's Nancy at ACHWS.org, because we're always happy to try and set up conversations that would be really useful. Andrew saying if anyone's at the Healing Arts Scotland conference at the National Gallery in Edinburgh, he's taking part. I'm also there. For whoever it was that said they had to go because they're coming to the event in Dumfries, I am currently sitting there now. So I think that what today for me is about is being able to create opportunities where we can hear what other people are doing, gain insight, innovation, experience, and also sometimes that we're all experiencing similar challenges. I know things about the training of artists, and this is a big area that we're looking into right now, about people who are working as artists who end up working in areas where there are increasing health and well-being impacts, and how are the artists kind of trained to work with those. So there's a few areas that I have seen in the conversation where I would like to maybe pick up on them, or we'll be sharing information through the e-bulletin that we send out that might help answer some of these things that we don't have time to go into more fully today. So I hope everyone has enjoyed the conversation today. I know I have, and I would again echo the thanks to Catherine for pulling together, hosting it, and to Andrew, Catherine and Stephanie for being our panel on this. I would encourage you, if you want to go onto the ACHWS website and sign up for the e-bulletin or join as a member, and we're here in Scotland, and we're here to find out what you want us to do, what you'd like to hear more about, what you'd like us to share. Basically, we're here for our members. So do get in touch with me. And there is one more conversation tomorrow. It's not too late to sign up if you want to, which is with the Scottish Refugee Council, and it's looking at sort of arts practice with migrant and refugee communities, especially with some of the things that have just been happening this week. We've got an amazing panel. Amal, who's hosting it, is one of the original Glasgow girls, and a number of practitioners working in this space, looking at how the rise of kind of racism and right-wing politics is affecting not them as artists in their practice, but also the participants that they're working with. So if you want to look that one up, that's happening tomorrow at 10 o'clock as well. So thank you very much for joining. It is 1 minute over, I think, and a round of applause to all of you. And I hopefully will see you in real life somewhere soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.